When waitress Selena Moore spills wine on billionaire Julian Davenport, she expects to be fired, not pursued. What starts as an accident turns into an irresistible offer. But can love bridge the gap between their worlds, or will secrets and society tear them apart? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun shone through the tall windows of Blackwood Mansion, illuminating the empty hallways and pristine rooms that seemed more like a museum than a home. Nathaniel Nate Blackwood stood in his office, gazing at the city skyline that stretched below his hillside estate. At 35, he had everything money could buy, except for the things that truly mattered. His assistant's voice came through the intercom on his desk. "Mr. Blackwood, the new chef has arrived for her interview." Nate pressed the button without enthusiasm. "Send her in." He didn't want a personal chef. The idea seemed unnecessary, frivolous even. But his board of directors had insisted that someone of his stature needed to entertain properly. And his habit of ordering takeout for business dinners was becoming an embarrassment. The door opened, and Maya Bennett walked in with confident steps. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her green eyes surveyed the room with curiosity. "Good morning, Mr. Blackwood," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Maya Bennett." Nate hesitated before shaking her hand briefly, pulling away quicker than was polite. Physical contact always made him uncomfortable. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "You come highly recommended, Ms. Bennett," he said, looking at her resume rather than at her. "But I should tell you up front that I'm not convinced. I need a personal chef." Maya smiled, undeterred. "With all due respect, Mr. Blackwood, everyone needs to eat. And based on what I've heard, you could use someone who understands the importance of proper nutrition for a busy executive." Nate looked up, surprised by her directness. Most people were intimidated by him, by his wealth, by his cold exterior. But this woman looked him straight in the eyes with a warmth that was almost disarming. "Tell me about your experience," he said, trying to regain control of the conversation. "I trained at the Culinary Institute and worked at the Golden Spoon for 3 years. But my real education came from my grandmother's kitchen in Louisiana. She taught me that food isn't just sustenance, it's a way to connect with people." Nate shifted uncomfortably. "I'm not looking to connect with my food, Ms. Bennett. I simply need someone who can prepare appropriate meals for business functions." Maya nodded, but her smile didn't fade. "Of course, but I believe even business meals should have soul, Mr. Blackwood. Food brings people together. It breaks down barriers." Something about her words made Nate's chest tighten. Barriers were what kept him safe, what allowed him to function in a world he never quite felt part of. "When can you start?" he asked abruptly, surprising even himself with the decision. Maya's eyes widened slightly. "I can start tomorrow, if that works for you." "Fine. Mrs. Peterson, my housekeeper, will show you the kitchen and your living quarters. The East Wing guest house has been converted for your use." Maya stood up, smiling. "Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Blackwood. You won't regret it." As she walked out, Nate found himself watching her longer than necessary, feeling something unfamiliar stir inside him, something that felt dangerously like curiosity. The next morning, Nate entered his kitchen for the first time in months. The thai smell of fresh coffee and something sweet filled the air. Maya stood at the counter, chopping fruit with skilled precision. She looked up and smiled. "Good morning, Mr. Blackwood. I hope you don't mind that I started early. I wanted to prepare breakfast before your 8 a.m. conference call." Nate nodded stiffly, unsure of the proper protocol. He wasn't used to sharing his space with anyone. "How did you know about my call?" he asked. "Mrs. Peterson briefed me on your schedule. I thought you might enjoy something light but energizing. The French toast is made with sourdough bread and topped with fresh berries and real maple syrup. There's also a protein smoothie if you prefer." Nate approached the counter cautiously, eyeing the beautifully arranged plate. "I usually just have coffee." Maya's smile faltered slightly. "Coffee alone isn't enough fuel for someone who works as hard as you do, but I can just wrap this up for later if you'd prefer." There was no judgment in her voice, only concern. It caught Nate off guard. "No, I'll try it," he said, sitting down at the counter. He took a bite of the French toast and couldn't help the small sound of appreciation that escaped him. It was perfect. Not too sweet, with just the right amount of cinnamon. "This is good," he admitted. Maya's face lit up with a smile that reached her eyes. "I'm glad you like it. I believe breakfast should be special. It sets the tone for the entire day." Nate found himself watching her as she moved around his kitchen with ease, as if she belonged there. There was something about her that felt familiar, though he was certain they'd never met before. "Will you be requiring lunch today as well?" she asked, bringing him back to reality. "I have a business lunch downtown." "Of course. And for dinner, I was thinking of preparing something simple but elegant. Perhaps a seared salmon with a lemon butter sauce and roasted vegetables." The way she described the food made it sound like art rather than just a meal. Nate nodded, suddenly aware that he was looking forward to dinner for the first time in years. "That sounds acceptable," he said, finishing his breakfast and standing up. "I'll be in my office most of the day." As he turned to leave, Maya called after him. "Mr. Blackwood?" He turned back. "Is there anything you particularly enjoy eating?" "Any favorites I should know about?" Nate paused, realizing he had never really thought about it. Food had always been just a necessity, not a pleasure. "No," he said finally, "nothing specific." Maya looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Then I look forward to helping you discover what you love." Her words followed him all the way to his office, echoing in his mind as he tried to focus on work. The weeks that followed brought changes to Blackwood Mansion that no one could have predicted. The cold, silent halls now occasionally carried the scent of freshly baked bread or simmering sauces. Nate found himself leaving his office earlier, drawn to the kitchen like a moth to a flame. Maya never intruded on his space, never pushed for conversation, but her presence was impossible to ignore. She filled the emptiness of his home with more than just food. She brought life. One evening, as Nate worked late in his office, the door opened slightly and Maya appeared with a tray. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," she said. "But you missed dinner and I thought you might be hungry." Nate glanced at his watch, surprised to see it was almost 10 p.m. "I lost track of time," he admitted. "It happens to the best of us," she said, setting down the tray. "It's just a simple pasta with pesto sauce, but it should still be warm." Instead of leaving, Maya lingered, looking at the photographs on his bookshelf. One showed a young Nate with an older man in front of the Black Tech. "Headquarters, is that your father?" she asked. Nate stiffened. "Yes, Robert Blackwood, founder of Black Tech." "You look like him," Maya observed. "You have the same serious expression." "My father believed that showing emotion was a weakness," Nate said before he could stop himself, "especially in business." Maya turned to him, her eyes soft. "And what? Do you believe Mr. Blackwood?" No one had ever asked him that before. People assumed he thought exactly like his father, that he was just a younger version of the cold, brilliant businessman who had built an empire. "I believe that it's worked for me so far," he said finally. Maya nodded, but something in her expression suggested she wasn't convinced. "Enjoy your dinner, Mr. Blackwood. Good night." After she left, Nate sat staring at the pasta, realizing he had revealed more to his chef in 30 seconds than he had to anyone in years. The first real test of Maya's abilities came with the announcement of an important dinner party. Black Tech was courting a major client, and Nate needed to impress. "I'll need dinner for 8 people this Saturday," he informed Maya 3 days before the event. "It needs to be exceptional." Maya didn't seem fazed. "Any dietary restrictions or preferences I should know about?" "Mr. Yamamoto doesn't eat red meat, and Mrs. Cortez is allergic to shellfish. Otherwise, you have free reign. I'll create a menu and have it ye." "For your approval tomorrow morning," Maya promised. When Nate saw the proposed menu the next day, he was impressed despite himself. Maya had planned a sophisticated 4-course meal that showcased both her skills and her attention to detail. "This looks good," he admitted, "but the client is particularly important. Perhaps we should hire a catering service with more experience in corporate events." For the first time since she'd arrived, Nate saw Maya's confidence waver. "If that's what you prefer, Mr. Blackwood," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "But I assure you I can handle this dinner." Nate studied her face, recognizing the determination in her eyes. It was the same look he saw in the mirror when people underestimated him. "No," he decided. We'll go with your menu. I hired you for a reason. The smile that spread across Maya's face made something in his chest tighten. Thank you for your trust, Mr. Blackwood. I won't let you down. The night of the dinner, Nate found himself uncommonly nervous. Not about the business deal, those he could navigate in his sleep, but about how Maya's food would be received. He needn't have worried. From the first course to the last, the meal was a triumph. Maya had created dishes that weren't just delicious, but conversation starters. The clients raved about the food, and by the time dessert was served, the deal was all but closed. When the guests had gone and Nate returned to the kitchen, he found Maya putting away the last of the clean dishes. You should have gone home hours. Hagas, he said. Maya shrugged. I wanted to make sure everything was perfect. It was, Nate admitted. More than perfect. You impressed everyone tonight. Maya's smile was tired, but genuine. Including you, especially me, he said, surprising himself with his honesty. Their eyes met, and for a moment neither spoke. Nate felt a strange urge to say more, to tell her how much she had changed his home in the short time she'd been there. Instead, he cleared his throat and stepped back. Good night, Maya, he said, using her first name for the first time. Good night, Nate, she replied softly, as if testing how his name felt on her lips. As he walked to his bedroom, Nate realized something was happening to him, something he had no experience with and no defense against. For the first time in his life, he was beginning to care about another person's presence in his world, and it terrified him. Spring arrived at Blackwood Mansion, bringing with it colorful flowers in the garden and a subtle change in the atmosphere. Inside, Maya had been working for Nate for 3 months now, and something had shifted between them. Their morning exchanges were no longer stiff and formal, but carried a comfortable familiarity. Nate found himself looking forward to those brief moments in the kitchen, watching Maya work her magic with simple ingredients. He had even started asking questions about her cooking techniques, genuinely curious about the passion that drove her. One Saturday morning, Nate wandered into the kitchen earlier than usual. He had no meetings, no urgent emails to answer. The freedom felt strange. Maya looked up from the herbs she was chopping, surprise evident on her face. You're up early for a weekend. I couldn't sleep, he admitted, sitting at the counter. Nightmares? She asked, her voice softening with concern. Nate hesitated. He never discussed personal matters with employees, but Maya didn't feel like just an employee anymore. Sometimes I dream about my parents' accident, he said quietly. It's been 15 years, but some nights it feels like yesterday. Maya set down her knife and moved closer. I didn't know they died in an accident. I'm so sorry, Nate. He nodded, looking down at his hands. A plane crash. I was 20, just starting to work at Black Tech. Suddenly I was alone, running a company. I barely understood. That must have been incredibly difficult, Maya said. No wonder you... She stopped herself. No wonder I what? Nate asked, looking up. Maya hesitated. No wonder you keep people at a distance. You lost the people closest to you. Her perception startled him. No one had ever connected his cold demeanor to his loss before. Most people just assumed he was naturally detached, like his father had been. I'm making cinnamon rolls, Maya said, changing the subject. Would you like to help? Nate blinked, caught off. God, I don't cook. Everyone can cook, Maya said with a smile. It's just following instructions, and you're good at that. Come on, I'll teach you. Before he could protest further, he found himself standing next to her at the counter, flour, dusting his expensive sweater as she taught him how to knead dough. You need to feel it, Maya explained, placing her hands over his to demonstrate. The dough will tell you when it's ready. Her touch sent an unexpected warmth through his body. Nate froze, suddenly aware of how close they were standing, of the scent of her shampoo, of the softness of her hands against his. Like this? He asked, his voice sounding strange even to his own ears. Maya nodded, seemingly unaware of his reaction. Perfect. You're a natural. The morning passed in a blur of flour, cinnamon, and laughter. Yes, actual laughter. Nate couldn't remember the last time he had laughed like this. freely and without restraint. By the time the rolls came out of the oven, golden and fragrant, he felt lighter somehow. "These are the best things I've ever tasted," he declared after. Taking his first bite, Maya beamed. "That's because you made them yourself. Food always tastes better when you put your heart into it." "I think it's because I had a good teacher," Nate replied, holding her gaze a moment longer than necessary. Maya blushed slightly and looked away. "I should clean up this mess." "Let me help," Nate offered, surprising them both. As they worked side by side, washing dishes and wiping counters, Nate realized he had never felt so comfortable with another person. The silence between them wasn't empty or awkward. It was peaceful. "Maya," he said suddenly, "would you like to have dinner with me tonight?" She stopped, dishcloth in hand. "You mean cook dinner for you?" "No," he clarified. "I mean go out somewhere, to a restaurant." Maya's eyes widened. "Like a date?" The word hung in the air between them. A date? Was that what he was asking for? "Just thought you might enjoy being served food for a change, instead of always preparing it," he said, avoiding a direct answer. Something like disappointment flickered across Maya's face. "That's very thoughtful, but I should probably decline. It might complicate our working relationship." Nate felt an unexpected pang of rejection. "Of course, you're right. But thank you for offering," she added quickly. "And thank you for this morning. It was fun." She gave him a small smile before excusing herself, leaving Nate alone in the kitchen, wondering what had just happened and why it had left him feeling so unsettled. The following week brought chaos to Blackwood Mansion. Black Tech was launching, a new product, and Nate was rarely home before midnight. Maya left meals for him in the refrigerator with detailed reheating instructions, but they barely saw each other. When they did cross paths, there was a new awkwardness between them, a cautious distance that hadn't been there before. Nate told himself it was better this way, safer. Whatever had been developing between them needed to stop before it went too far. On Thursday evening, Nate returned home to find an unfamiliar car in his driveway. Inside, he heard laughter coming from the kitchen, Maya's laugh, bright and musical, accompanied by a deeper male voice. He walked into the kitchen to find Maya sitting at the counter with a handsome man about Nate's age. They were sharing a bottle of wine and what appeared to be a homemade pizza. "Oh, Mr. Blackwood," Maya said, standing up quickly. "I didn't expect you home so early." The return to formality wasn't lost on Nate. "Clearly," he said, his voice colder than he intended. "This is my brother David," Maya explained. "He surprised me with a visit. David, this is Nathaniel Blackwood, my employer." The man stood and extended his hand. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Blackwood. Maya's told me a lot about you." Nate shook his hand briefly. "Has she? How interesting." An uncomfortable silence fell over the kitchen. "We'll get out of your way," Maya said, gathering the plates. "I left your dinner in the warming drawer." "No need to rush on my account," Nate said stiffly. "I'm not hungry. I'll be in my office." He walked away, feeling foolish for the relief that had washed over him when she said, "brother." What did it matter to him if Maya was entertaining a boyfriend? She was his employee, nothing more, but the lie felt hollow even to himself. Later that night, a soft knock on his office door interrupted his thoughts. Maya entered, carrying a tray with a cup of tea. "Chamomile," she said, setting it down on his desk. "It helps with stress." Nate looked up from his computer. "Thank you, but I'm fine." Maya stayed where she was, her expression troubled. "Are you? Because you seemed upset earlier." "I was just surprised to find strangers in my home," he said, the words coming out harsher than intended. "David isn't a stranger, he's my brother," Maya clarified. "And I apologize for not asking permission. It won't happen again." Nate sighed, running a hand through his hair. "No, I'm sorry. This is your home too, and you should be able to have visitors. I overreacted." Maya's expression softened. "Thank you. And I'm sorry for the Mr. Blackwood thing. I just thought, since David was there." "It's fine," Nate said, though it hadn't felt fine at all. "You should go enjoy the rest of your evening with your brother." Maya hesitated as if she wanted to say more, but then nodded. "Good night, Nate." After she left, Nate sat staring at the cup of tea, wondering when his carefully ordered life had become so complicated. The annual Black Tech Charity Gala was the biggest event of the year, and preparations at the mansion were in full swing. Maya had been planning the menu for weeks, coordinating with the event staff to ensure everything would be perfect. The day of the gala, Nate was a bundle of nerves, though he hid it well behind his usual composed facade. He stood in front of his bedroom mirror adjusting his bow tie when a knock came at his door. "Come in," he called, expecting Mrs. Peterson with some last-minute question about the seating arrangements. Instead, Maya entered, looking completely different from her usual self. She wore a simple but elegant black dress that hugged her curves, and her hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders. Nate found himself momentarily speechless. "Sorry to bother you," she said, "but Mrs. Peterson said you wanted to approve the final table arrangements." Nate cleared his throat. "Yes, thank you." He took the tablet she offered, trying not to notice how the light caught in her hair or how her eyes seemed even greener against the black of her dress. "You look different," he said awkwardly. Maya smiled. "Is that a compliment?" "Yes," he admitted. "You look beautiful." A faint blush colored her cheeks. "Thank you. I don't often have reasons to dress up, but tonight is special." Something in her tone made Nate look up. "Special?" "My grandmother is coming," Maya explained, her eyes bright with excitement. "She's the one who taught me to cook, remember? When she heard I was preparing food for the Black Tech Gala, she insisted on seeing it for herself. I hope that's okay." The genuine happiness in Maya's face made Nate smile. "Of course it's okay. I'd be honored to meet her." Maya looked relieved. "Thank you, Nate. That means a lot to me." As she turned to leave, Nate found himself saying, "Maybe you could introduce us during the event." Maya paused, looking back with surprise. "You want to meet my grandmother?" "She sounds like an important person in your life," Nate said simply. "And anyone who taught you to cook like you do must be extraordinary." The smile Maya gave him then was different from any he'd seen before. It was filled with a warmth that reached her eyes and seemed to light up her entire face. "I'd love that," she said softly before leaving the room. Nate stood staring at the closed door, wondering when exactly this woman had begun to occupy so much space in his thoughts. The gala was in full swing, with hundreds of elegantly dressed guests filling the grand ballroom of the Heritage Hotel. The Black Tech elite mingled with potential investors, celebrities and politicians, all there to support the company's charitable foundation. Nate moved through the crowd with practiced ease, shaking hands and making small talk, all while his eyes periodically scanned the room for Maya. He spotted her near the kitchen doors, deep in conversation with an elegant older woman who shared her smile. Making his excuses to the city councilman he was speaking with, Nate made his way across the room. "Maya," he said as he approached. She turned, her face, lighting up. "Nate, I was just looking for you. This is my grandmother, Eloise Bennett." "Grandma, this is Nathaniel Blackwood." The older woman studied him with sharp, intelligent eyes. "So you're the young man who's been enjoying my granddaughter's cooking. She speaks very highly of you." "Does she?" Nate asked, glancing at Maya with surprise. "The food tonight is exceptional," he told Eloise. "Your granddaughter has an incredible talent." Eloise nodded proudly. Maya has always understood that cooking is about more than just food. It's about nourishing souls and bringing people together. "She certainly brought life to my home," Nate admitted. "I didn't realize how empty it was until she arrived." Maya looked at him with wide eyes, clearly surprised by his candor. "Music starting," Eloise observed, as the band began to play a slow waltz. "You two should dance. I need to rest these old feet for a bit." Before either could protest, Eloise had made her way to a nearby chair, leaving them alone. "We don't have to dance," Maya said quickly. "I know you're busy with guests." Nate hesitated only briefly before offering his hand. "I'd like to dance with you if you want to." Maya placed her hand in his, and he led her to the dance floor, suddenly grateful for the dance lessons his mother had insisted on when he was younger. With one hand on Maya's waist and the other holding hers, he guided them into the flow of other couples. "You're full of surprises tonight," Maya said softly. "How so?" Nate asked, acutely aware of her closeness, of the warmth of her hand in his. "First," You want to meet my grandmother. Now you're dancing with your chef in front of all your important guests. You're more than just my chef, Maya, Nate said, the words coming out before he could stop them. Her eyes met his, a question in their depths. What am I then? Nate didn't have an answer, at least not one he was ready to admit even to himself. But as they moved together to the music, her body fitting perfectly against his, he knew something had changed irrevocably between them. The spell was broken when James Harrington, Nate's main business rival, approached them as the song ended. "Nathaniel," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "aren't you going to introduce me to your lovely dancing partner?" "James," Nate acknowledged stiffly, "this is Maya Bennett." "Maya, James Harrington, CEO of Harrington Technologies." Maya smiled politely. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Harrington." James took her hand and kissed it, holding it a moment too long. "The pleasure is all mine, Ms. Bennett. I must say, Nathaniel has been keeping you a secret. Are you a new board member?" "I'm Mr. Blackwood's chef," Maya said simply. James raised an eyebrow, looking between them with new interest. "His chef? How interesting. Nathaniel, you always did have unusual taste." The implication in his tone made Nate's jaw clench. "Maya, here's also the mastermind behind tonight's menu, which everyone has been praising. Now, if you'll excuse us, James." He placed a protective hand on Maya's back and guided her away from his rival. "I don't think he meant any harm," Maya said once they were out of earshot. "You don't know James," Nate replied grimly. "He's always looking for weaknesses he can exploit." "And am I a weakness?" Maya asked, her voice soft but challenging. Nate looked at her, at the strength and warmth in her eyes, and realized the truth. "No," he said finally. "You're the opposite." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of speeches and presentations. The gala raised record funds for the foundation, and everyone declared it a tremendous success. But for Nate, the highlight was watching Maya with her grandmother, seeing the love between them and realizing how much he wanted to be part of that. Warmth. As the last guests departed and the staff began cleaning up, Nate found Maya in a quiet corner, saying goodbye to Eloise. "It was an honor to meet you," he told the older woman. "You're welcome at my home any time." Eloise studied him with knowing eyes. "Take care of my girl," she said simply. "She deserves someone who appreciates all that she is." After Eloise left, Nate and Maya stood in comfortable silence, watching. "The cleaning crew work. Your grandmother is remarkable," Nate said finally. "Now I understand where you get your strength," Maya smiled. She likes you. She doesn't usually warm up to people so quickly. Must be my charm," Nate joked, surprising himself with the lightness he felt. Maya laughed, the sound washing over him like a warm breeze. "Must be." They walked back to the waiting car together, closer than before, but still not touching. As they drove home in the quiet darkness, Nate found himself wondering what it would be like to reach across the seat and take her hand, to pull her close, to feel her lips against his. The thought both thrilled and terrified him, because for all his business acumen, for all his wealth and power, Nate had no idea how to navigate the feelings growing inside him, feelings he had never experienced before and had no blueprint for understanding. What he did know, with absolute certainty, was that something had to change, because he couldn't keep pretending that Maya was just his employee, not when she had somehow become essential to his happiness. The day after the gala, Nate woke feeling different somehow, lighter, as if a weight he hadn't known he was carrying had been lifted. Memories of dancing with Maya, of her smile, of the way she'd looked at him when he admitted she was more than just his chef, filled his mind. He made his way to the kitchen earlier than usual, hoping to see her, but found it empty. Only a covered plate of fresh muffins on the counter with a note, "Gone to the farmer's market. Back by 10. Enjoy breakfast. Wham." Nate felt a strange disappointment. He picked up a muffin and bit into it, the burst of blueberries and lemon reminding him of her talent for creating simple pleasures. As he ate, he walked to the window that overlooked the grounds, noticing how green everything had become with spring's arrival. The sound of tires on gravel caught his attention. Maya's small red car pulled up, and she emerged carrying several bags of produce. Without thinking, Nate headed outside to help her. "You're up early," she said, surprise in her voice as he approached. "I thought you might need a hand," he replied, taking the heavier bags from her. Maya smiled, the morning sun catching in her hair. "Thank you. I found some amazing strawberries. I was thinking of making a tart for dessert tonight." They walked together toward the house, a comfortable silence between them. "Last night was wonderful," Maya said finally. "My grandmother hasn't stopped texting me about how impressed she was with everything." "Especially you." Nate felt an unexpected warmth at her words. "She's an extraordinary woman. I can see where you get your spirit from." Maya glanced at him, a curious expression on her face. "You seem different this morning." "Do I?" Nate asked, holding the door open for her. "Yes, more open." The observation hung between them as they entered the kitchen and began unpacking the groceries. Nate found himself enjoying the simple domesticity of the moment, working alongside Maya as they put away fresh vegetables and fruit. "I was thinking," he said suddenly, "would you like to have dinner with me tonight?" Maya paused, an apple in her hand. "You mean like the other day?" When I said no, Nate took a deep breath. "Yes, but this time I'm being clearer. I'd like to take you to dinner. As a date." The apple slipped from Maya's fingers, landing with a soft thud on the counter. "A date? With you? Is that so surprising?" Nate asked, suddenly uncertain. "Yes," Maya said honestly. "You're my employer, Nate, and until recently you barely spoke to me except to give instructions about meals." Nate stepped closer to her. "Things have changed, I've changed, and I think you feel it too." Maya's eyes met his, and for a moment he thought she might agree. Then she shook her head slightly. "I can't, Nate. It would be too complicated. What happens if it doesn't work out? I'd lose my job and my home in one go." The rejection stung, more than Nate had expected. "I would never let that happen." "You say that now," Maya said gently. "But feelings change, and I've worked too hard to get where I am to risk everything on whatever this is." She picked up the fallen apple and placed it in the fruit bowl. "I should get started on lunch. You have that conference call at 1, right?" The abrupt change of subject was like a door closing in Nate's face. He nodded stiffly, his walls beginning to rebuild themselves. "Yes, I'll be in my office if you need me." As he walked away, Nate felt the familiar coldness settling over him again, like an old uncomfortable coat he'd been temporarily free of. The following weeks brought a subtle strain to life at Blackwood Mansion. Nate buried himself in work, often leaving before Maya arrived in the morning and returning after she'd gone to bed. When they did see each other, their interactions were polite but distant, the warmth of the gala night seemingly forgotten. In late April, Black Tech was preparing for their biggest product launch in years. Nate was working around the clock, the itch, stress evident in the dark circles under his eyes and the tension in his shoulders. One night, well past midnight, he returned home to find a single light on in the kitchen. Maya sat at the counter reading a book. "You're still up," he said, surprised. She closed her book. "I wanted to make sure you ate something. You've been skipping meals again." The concern in her voice caught him off guard. "You don't need to wait up for me. It's not in your job description." Maya sighed. "Not everything I do is because of my job, Nate." She stood and went to the refrigerator, pulling out a covered plate. "It's just pasta with pesto and grilled chicken. It'll only take a minute to heat up." Too tired to argue, Nate sat at the counter and watched as she moved efficiently around the kitchen. The familiar routine soothed him, despite the awkwardness that had grown between them. "You look exhausted," Maya commented as she placed the warmed plate in front of him. "Is the launch not going well?" Nate took a bite. The flavors a welcome comfort after a day of vending machine snacks. "The software has bugs we can't solve. If we don't fix them before the launch next week, we're looking at a disaster." Maya sat across from him. "Is there anything I can do to help?" The simple offer touched him. "Just this," he said, gesturing. "To the food. It helps more than you know." They sat in silence as he ate, but it was a more comfortable quiet than they'd shared in weeks. "I'm sorry," Nate said finally, setting down his fork, "for making things awkward between us. I shouldn't have put you in that position." Maya's expression softened. "You have nothing to apologize for. If circumstances were different, she didn't finish the sentence, but the implication hung in the air between them. Circumstances like what? Nate asked, unable to stop himself. If I weren't your boss? Maya nodded slowly. That's part of it, but also... She hesitated. Nate, you've never been in a relationship before, have you? The question caught him off guard. How did you know? Little things, she said gently. The way you hold yourself apart from people. The surprise on your face when I touch your arm or stand close to you. The fact that you don't seem to know what to do with the feelings you're having. Her perception was unnerving. Does it matter? It matters, Maya said, her voice soft but firm. Because the first time you open your heart to someone is a big deal, and I'm not sure I'm the right person for that. Nate felt a surge of frustration. Shouldn't that be my decision? It's both our decision, Maya replied, and right now, with everything so complicated between us, I don't think either of us is in a position to make it clearly. She stood up, taking his empty plate. You should get some sleep. Tomorrow's another day. As she turned to leave, Nate caught her hand. Maya, wait! The touch of her skin against his scent warmth spreading up his arm. She looked down at their joined hands, but didn't pull away. What if I wasn't your boss? He asked quietly. What if there were no complications? Would you feel differently then? Maya's eyes met his, and he saw the conflict in them. I don't know, she admitted. Maybe, but that's not our reality. She gently withdrew her hand. Good night, Nate. After she left, Nate remained sitting in the quiet kitchen, wondering how something as simple as feelings could be so incredibly complicated. The morning of the Black Tech launch event arrived with grey skies and a steady drizzle that matched Nate's mood. The programming team had worked around the clock, but the software bugs remained. They had no choice but to move forward and hope for the best. Your suit is pressed and ready in your closet, Mrs. Peterson informed him as he came downstairs. And Miss Bennett left something for you in the kitchen. Nate found a small box on the counter with a note. For good luck. Today you've got this. Inside was a delicate pastry in the shape of the Black Tech logo, glazed to a perfect golden brown. It was such a small thing, but the thoughtfulness of it made his chest tighten. Maya knew how important today was to him, despite the distance that had grown between them. He took a bite, savoring the perfect balance of sweetness and buttery richness. Then he did something he'd never done before. He took out his phone and texted her a simple message. Thank you, I needed this today. Her reply came moments later. Believe in yourself. I do. Those 5 words carried him through the morning as he finalized his presentation and made his way to the convention center, where hundreds of tech journalists and industry insiders waited. The launch itself was a blur of lights, applause, and carefully rehearsed words. Nate moved through it all with a practiced calm that belied his inner anxiety. When the moment came to demonstrate the new software, he held his breath, half expecting it to crash spectacularly. But it didn't. The program ran smoothly, the interface responding perfectly to every command. The audience applauded enthusiastically, and Nate felt a wave of relief so powerful it made him lightheaded. Mr. Blackwood, a young reporter called out during the Q&A session. Is it true that Harrington Technologies is developing a competing product? The question sent a ripple of murmurs through the audience. Nate maintained his composure. We're always aware of what our competitors are doing, but Black Tech remains at the forefront of innovation in this field. James Harrington himself was sitting in the front row, his expression unreadable. When the presentation ended, he approached Nate with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Impressive demonstration, Nathaniel. Your team did well. Thank you, James, Nate replied cautiously. I was hoping we might have dinner soon, James continued. There's a business proposition I'd like to discuss with you. Nate's instincts told him to be wary, but curiosity won out. I could do dinner next week. Excellent, James said. And bring that charming chef of yours. What was her name? Maya. I'd love to sample more of her cooking. The casual mention of Maya sent a protective surge through Nate. Maya isn't part of my business dealings, James. James raised an eyebrow. No? She seemed quite important to you at the gala. But if you insist on keeping her private, I understand completely. Before Nate could respond, James walked away, leaving behind a sense of unease. There was something calculating in the way he'd mentioned Maya, as if he'd discovered a valuable piece of information. Pushing the thought aside, Nate spent the next few hours giving interviews and accepting congratulations. By the time he returned home, it was past 9 and the house was quiet. The kitchen light was on, though, and he found a covered plate in the warming drawer with a note. "Congratulations. I watched the live stream. You were amazing. Celebrate with your favorite salmon and a glass of champagne." The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched him deeply. Looking around the empty kitchen, Nate felt a surge of longing for Maya's presence. Despite their complicated situation, she still cared enough to make his success special. Taking his plate and the champagne, he headed to her cottage, determined to thank her in person. He knocked on the door, suddenly nervous. Maya opened it, clearly surprised to see him. She was dressed casually in jeans and a soft sweater, her hair down around her shoulders. "Nate, I didn't expect you back so early. Congratulations on the launch. It looked perfect." "Thanks to you," he said, holding up the plate. Maya shook her head. "I didn't write a single line of code. That was all you and your team. How you kept me going," Nate insisted. "Your support means more than you know." A soft smile spread across Maya's face. "I'm glad I could help. Would you like to come in? I was just watching a movie." Nate hesitated only briefly before nodding. "I'd like that." Her cottage was warm and inviting, with soft lighting and comfortable furniture. It smelled like her, a subtle mix of vanilla and something uniquely Maya. He sat on the couch while she got a glass for the champagne. To Black Tech's newest success, she toasted, clinking her glass against his. Nate took a sip, studying her over the rim of his glass. "You really watched the whole thing?" "Of course," Maya said. "I wouldn't have missed it. You looked so confident up there, like you were born to lead." "I was terrified," Nate admitted, "especially when the software demo started." Maya laughed. "Well, you couldn't tell. You looked completely in control." They fell into easy conversation as Nate ate his dinner, the awkwardness of recent weeks fading away. He told her about the presentation, the journalists' questions, and James Harrington's strange behavior. "He specifically mentioned you," Nate said, frowning at the memory. "It felt off somehow." Maya looked surprised. "Me? Why would he care? About your chef?" "I don't know," Nate admitted, "but I don't trust him." They moved on to lighter topics, and by the time Nate had finished his meal, they were laughing together like old friends. Maya put on the movie she'd been watching, an old romantic comedy that Nate had never seen. Sitting beside her in the soft lamplight, Nate felt more at peace than he had in weeks. When Maya laughed at something in the film, the sound filled him, with a warmth that had nothing to do with the champagne. Halfway through the movie, Maya's head drooped onto his shoulder as she dozed off. Nate sat perfectly still, afraid to wake her, savoring the closeness. Her hair smelled like coconut and jasmine, and her body was warm against his side. When the movie ended, he gently touched her shoulder. "Maya," he whispered. "The movie's over." She stirred, blinking up at him with sleepy eyes. "I'm sorry. I must have been more tired than I thought." "It's late," Nate said, reluctantly standing. "I should go." Maya walked him to the door, her movement slow with fatigue. "Thank you for coming by. It was nice to celebrate with you." Standing in the doorway, Nate looked down at her, at the softness in her eyes and the gentle curve of her lips. The urge to kiss her was overwhelming. "Maya," he said softly, his hand reaching up to touch her cheek. She didn't pull away, her eyes meeting his with a question in their depths. Slowly, giving her every chance to stop him, Nate leaned down and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle, tentative, a question rather than a demand. For a heartbeat, Maya stood frozen, and Nate feared he'd made a terrible mistake. Then her hands came up to rest on his chest, and she kissed him back with a sweetness that made his heart ache. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. Maya's eyes were wide, her lips slightly parted in surprise. "I shouldn't have done that," Nate said, though he couldn't bring himself to regret it. "No," Maya agreed softly, "you shouldn't have." But she didn't step away, didn't remove her hands from his chest. where she could surely feel the racing of his heart. "What happens now?" Nate asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Maya shook her head slightly. "I don't know. This changes everything, doesn't it?" The uncertainty in her voice brought Nate back to reality. He took a step back, breaking the connection between them. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to complicate things further." "It's not just you," Maya admitted. "I could have stopped you. I didn't want to." The confession hung in the air between them, full of possibility and danger. "We should talk about this," Nate said. "Tomorrow, when we're both clear-headed." Maya nodded, though her expression was troubled. Tomorrow. As Nate walked back to the main house, his lips still tingling from their kiss, he felt a mixture of elation and fear. Something had shifted between them tonight, something that couldn't be undone. Whether it would bring them closer together or drive them further apart remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. He had never felt more alive than in the moment when Maya had kissed him back. Morning arrived with unexpected chaos. Peterson knocked urgently on Nate's bedroom door, rousing him from a deep sleep. "Mr. Blackwood, you need to see this immediately," she said, her voice unusually agitated. She handed him a tablet open to Society Beat, a popular gossip website. The headline made his blood run cold. "Tech Billionaire's Secret Romance. Nathaniel." Blackwood's intimate relationship with his personal chef exposed. Below was a series of photos, Nate and Maya dancing at the gala, her head on his shoulder as they watched fireworks, and most damning of all, their kiss in her doorway last night. "How did they get these?" Nate demanded, scrolling through the article with growing horror. The piece was filled with lurid speculation about their relationship, painting Maya as a gold digger who had cooked her way into the billionaire's bed and heart. There were quotes from anonymous sources close to Blackwood, claiming that Maya had been hired for her looks rather than her culinary skills. "Where is she?" Nate asked, already pulling on clothes. "In the kitchen," Mrs. Peterson replied. "She's seen it too." Nate rushed downstairs to find Maya standing at the counter, her face pale as she stared at her phone. When she looked up at him, her eyes were filled with a mixture of hurt and anger. "Did you see what they're saying about me?" she asked, her voice barely steady. "They're making me sound like I seduced you for your money." "I'll fix this," Nate promised, moving toward her. She stepped back, shaking her head. "How? The damage is already done. My professional reputation. I'll release a statement. Make it clear that our relationship is nothing like what they're suggesting," Nate said. "What exactly is our relationship, Nate?" Maya asked quietly. "Last night you kissed me. This morning we're in the tabloids. What am I supposed to tell my grandmother? My friends? The other chefs I've worked with who will see this and think I've been sleeping my way to success?" The pain in her voice cut through him. "Maya, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. But it has happened," she said, wiping away a tear that had escaped despite her efforts to remain composed. "And now I have to deal with the consequences." "We'll deal with them together," Nate insisted. Maya shook her head. "I think I need some time away, to think, to figure out what I want." The words hit Nate like a physical blow. "You're leaving?" "Just for a few days," Maya said. "I called David this morning. He's coming to pick me up." "Maya, please," Nate began, but she cut him off. "I need space, Nate. This is all happening too fast." Before he could respond, his phone rang. It was his PR director, no doubt calling about the scandal. By the time he finished the call, assuring his team that he would be at the office within the hour to craft a response, Maya had disappeared upstairs to pack. Nate waited in the foyer, pacing anxiously until she came down with a small suitcase. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but her chin was held high with dignity. "You don't have to leave," he said. "We can face this together." "I need to protect what's left of my reputation," Maya replied. "And I need to decide if whatever is happening between us is worth the cost." The words stung, though Nate understood her hesitation. "How long will you be gone?" "A few days, maybe a week," Maya said. "I'll let you know." A car horn sounded outside. David had arrived. Maya picked up her suitcase. "Maya," Nate said desperately. He wanted to tell her how he felt. that the possibility of losing her terrified him more than any business crisis ever had. But the words caught in his throat, unfamiliar and frightening. "I'll call you," she said simply, and then she was gone, the door closing behind her with a finality that left Nate standing alone in the echoing silence of his mansion. The house that had slowly come alive with Maya's presence suddenly felt emptier than ever before. And Nate was left wondering if he had just lost the one person who had begun to teach his closed-off heart how to feel. The days following Maya's departure were the longest of Nate's life. The mansion felt hollow without her presence, every room a reminder of her absence. He threw himself into damage control at BlackTech, working with his PR team to release a statement that was both vague and protective. "Mr. Blackwood values the privacy of all his employees and will not comment on unfounded speculation," the official response read. "He asks that the media respect his privacy and that of his staff during this time." The statement did little to quell the rumors. If anything, its ambiguity fueled further speculation. Business associates who had never shown interest in Nate's personal life suddenly found ways to mention Maya in conversations, watching his reaction with barely concealed curiosity. James Harrington was the worst, calling Nate directly the day after the story broke. "Nathaniel," he said, his voice dripping with false concern, "I just wanted to check how you're holding up with all this unpleasant publicity." "I'm fine, James," Nate replied coldly, "though I'm curious how those photographers knew where to find me last night." There was a brief pause before James responded. "Are you suggesting I had something to do with this?" "Did? So you?" Nate asked bluntly. James chuckled. "I'm hurt by the accusation. But while we're on the topic, how is the lovely Maya? I notice she hasn't been seen at your side since the story broke." The mention of Maya's name in James's mouth made Nate's jaw clench. "Stay away from her, James. I mean it." My, James replied, amusement in his voice. "You really do care for her, don't you? How fascinating." The cold-hearted Nathaniel Blackwood brought low by a pretty face in the kitchen. "Is there a point to this call?" Nate asked, struggling to maintain his composure. "Just friendly concern," James said. "And a reminder that mixing business with pleasure can be messy, especially when the business in question is worth billions. Food for thought, Nathaniel." After hanging up, Nate sat at his desk, a sense of unease growing within him. Something about James's tone suggested he knew more than he was letting on, that perhaps his interest in Maya wasn't just casual curiosity, but more pressing than James's strange behavior was Maya's continued silence. 3 days had passed without a word from her. Nate had texted once, a simple message, "I hope you're okay, I miss you." No response had come. On the 4th day, as Nate sat alone in his kitchen with a cup of coffee that didn't taste nearly as good as Maya's, Mrs. Peterson entered with an envelope. "This was just delivered for you, sir," she said, placing it on the counter. Inside was a simple white card with Maya's neat handwriting. "Nate, I need more time. Please don't contact me for now. I'll reach out when I'm ready. M." The message was like a physical blow. Nate read it again and again, searching for any hint of warmth, any suggestion that she was coming back. There was none. Mrs. Peterson watched him with sympathetic eyes. "She'll come around, sir. Miss Bennett cares for you. Anyone can see that." "Can they?" Nate asked bitterly. "Because right now it seems like she can't get far enough away from me." He spent the rest of the day in his office, trying to lose himself in work, but finding his thoughts constantly returning to Maya. Had he pushed too hard? Had the kiss been a mistake? Or was it the media attention that had driven her away? That night, unable to sleep, Nate wandered down to the kitchen. Without conscious thought, he found himself opening the refrigerator, staring at the carefully organized ingredients that Maya had left behind. An idea formed in his mind. If Maya had used food to reach him, perhaps he could do the same for her. The next morning, Nate called his assistant. "Cancel my meetings for the day," he instructed, "and find me the address for Eloise Bennett." 2 hours later, Nate stood on the porch of a modest but well-kept house in a quiet neighborhood, a bag of groceries in his arms. He rang the doorbell, his heart pounding with uncertainty. The door opened to reveal Maya's grandmother, who didn't seem at all surprised to see him. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, her eyes assessing him coolly. I've been wondering when you'd show up. Is Maya here? He asked. Eloise shook her head. She's staying with her brother, but come in anyway. We should talk? She led him into a warm kitchen that smelled of cinnamon and coffee. Maya tells me you're quite the businessman, she said, gesturing for him to sit at the table. Smart with numbers and strategies. That's what they say, Nate replied, setting down the grocery bag. But not so smart with hearts, I think, Eloise observed, pouring 2 cups of coffee and joining him at the table. Mine or your own? The directness of her statement caught Nate off guard. I never meant to hurt her, he said quietly. Intentions aren't always enough, Eloise replied. Maya has worked hard for her reputation as a chef. In one night, those tabloids made her look like a woman trading favors for advancement. Shame washed over Nate. I should have been more careful. Protected her better. Yes, you should have, Eloise agreed. But that's not why she left. Nate looked up in surprise. It's not? Eloise studied him over her coffee cup. My granddaughter left because she's falling in love with you, Mr. Blackwood. And that terrifies her almost as much as it terrifies you. The words hit Nate like a thunderbolt. She's falling in love with me. Maya has always been careful with her heart, Eloise continued. Her father walked out when she was young. Her first serious boyfriend used her to get ahead in culinary school, taking credit for her recipes. She learned early that loving someone means being vulnerable to hurt. Nate absorbed this new information, seeing Maya in a different light. I would never hurt her deliberately, he said. But you might hurt her accidentally, Eloise pointed out. You've never been in love before, have you? Nate shook his head slowly. No, I never let myself get close enough to anyone. And why is that? Eloise asked gently. The question made Nate uncomfortable, forcing him to examine parts of himself he'd long kept buried. After my parents died, I had to become the head of Black Tech overnight. I was barely 20. There was no room for weakness, for emotional distractions. So I soon shut that part of myself down. Until Maya, Eloise said. Until Maya, Nate agreed softly. Eloise nodded, as if confirming something to herself. So now the question is, what are you prepared to do about it? Nate reached for the grocery bag he'd brought. I want to make her something. To show her I understand what food means to her, what she's taught me about connection. A smile touched Eloise's lips. Now that's a language my granddaughter understands. What did you have in mind? Her cinnamon rolls, Nate said. The ones we made together that morning. It was the first time I felt connected to someone in years. A good choice, Eloise approved, but you'll need help. Maya didn't tell you her secret ingredient. For the next few hours, Nate worked side by side with Eloise, learning the special touches that made Maya's cinnamon rolls unique. A hint of orange zest in the dough, a splash of bourbon in the glaze. As they worked, Eloise shared stories of Maya's childhood, of her determination and passion for cooking. She was 7 when she first insisted on making Sunday breakfast by herself, Eloise recalled, showing Nate how to roll the dough properly. Made the biggest mess you've ever seen, but those pancakes were made with such love we all declared them the best we'd ever tasted. Nate listened, absorbing every detail, building a more complete picture of the woman who had somehow broken through his carefully constructed walls. When the rolls were done, golden and fragrant, Eloise carefully packed them in a container. Perfect, she declared. Now let me give you David's address. But Nate, he looked up at the use of his first name. If you're not serious about my granddaughter, walk away now. She deserves someone who will put her first, who will love her completely. Can you be that man? The question hung in the air between them. A week ago, Nate might have hesitated, unsure of his capacity for that kind of emotional commitment. But the days without Maya had taught him something important. She wasn't just a pleasant addition to his life. She had become essential to his happiness. Yes, he said with quiet certainty. I can be that man. I want to be that man. Eloise studied him for a long moment before nodding. Then go get her. David Bennett's apartment was in a modern building downtown. Nate stood outside the door, the container of cinnamon rolls in one hand, his heart in his throat. He knocked before he could lose his nerve. The door opened to reveal a surprised David. Mr. Blackwood, how did you find this address? Your grandmother, Nate admitted. Is Maya here? I need to talk to her. David hesitated. She's been pretty upset. I'm not sure she's ready to see you. Who is it, David? Maya's voice called from inside. David gave Nate a warning look before stepping aside. It's your boss. Maya appeared in the hallway, freezing. When she saw Nate, she looked tired, her eyes shadowed as if she hadn't been sleeping well. Still, the sight of her made Nate's heart skip a beat. What are you doing here? She asked, her voice carefully controlled. I brought you something, Nate said, holding up the container. Can we talk, please? Maya glanced at her brother, who shrugged. I'll go pick up that takeout we ordered. Give you two some privacy. After David left, Maya reluctantly invited Nate inside. The apartment was small but comfortable, with books and musical instruments suggesting David's artistic interests. You shouldn't have come, Maya said, crossing her arms. I said I needed time. I know, Nate acknowledged, and I'm sorry for not respecting that. But I couldn't wait any longer without at least trying to make things right. He placed the container on the coffee table and opened it, releasing the scent of fresh cinnamon rolls. Maya's eyes widened in surprise. You made these? She asked skeptically. With your grandmother's help, Nate admitted. She showed me your secret ingredient. A small smile touched Maya's lips, despite her efforts to remain stern. Orange zest in the dough? And bourbon in the glaze, Nate added. She said they were your favorite growing up. Maya sat down on the couch, still keeping her distance. Why did you go to all this trouble? Nate took a seat across from her. Because I wanted to speak to you in a language you understand. Food, it isn't just sustenance, it's connection. That's what you taught me. He pushed the container toward her. Please, try one. With obvious reluctance, Maya took a roll and broke off a piece. As she tasted it, her expression softened slightly. Not bad for a first attempt. The dough's a little dense. I probably kneaded it too long, Nate said. I was nervous. Maya looked up at him. Nervous about making cinnamon rolls? Nervous about seeing you again, Nate corrected. Afraid you might not want to come back. Maya set down the roll. The tabloids are calling me a gold digger, Nate. Do you have any idea what that's like? To have everything you've worked for reduced to a sleazy headline? No, Nate admitted. And I'm so sorry you're going through this because of me. It's not just the publicity, Maya said, her voice softening. It's everything. How fast this is moving. How complicated it is. You're my employer, Nate. If things went wrong between us... I know, Nate interrupted gently. I've been thinking about that too, which is why I have a proposition for you. Maya looked wary. What kind of proposition? You're an incredible chef, Maya. You deserve to have your talent recognized on your own terms, not as an employee in my kitchen. I want to help you open your own restaurant. Maya's eyes widened in shock. What? A place that's entirely yours, Nate continued, where you can showcase your vision and your talent. I'll provide the initial funding as an investor, but you'll have complete creative control. You want to give me a restaurant? Maya asked incredulously. Not give, Nate clarified. Invest in, because I believe in you, and because I want to remove the employer-employee barrier between us. Maya stood up, pacing the small living room. This is crazy, Nate. You can't just solve problems by throwing money at them. That's not what I'm doing, Nate insisted. I'm trying to create a situation where we can explore what's happening between us without the power imbalance, where you don't have to worry about your job or your home if things don't work out. And if I say no, Maya asked, to the restaurant and to us? The question struck Nate like a physical blow, but he forced himself to answer honestly. Then you still have a job at Blackwood Mansion for as long as you want it, and I'll keep my distance personally, but I hope you'll consider the restaurant regardless. You're too talented to be cooking just for me. Maya sat back down, studying his face. Why are you doing this, Nate? Really? The moment of truth had arrived. Nate took a deep breath, gathering his courage to say words he'd never spoken before. Because I'm in love with you, Maya. I didn't know what that meant until you left and took all the light with you. The house is empty without you. My life is empty without you. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right between us. Maya's eyes glistened with unshed tears. You love me? Yes, Nate said simply. I love how you see beauty in simple things. I love how you've never been intimidated by me. I love that you care more about the quality of what's on a plate than the cost of the plate itself. You've taught me what it means to truly taste life, Maya, and I don't want to go back to a bland existence without you. A tear slipped down Maya's cheek. I've been so confused, she admitted. Part of me wants to run away from these feelings because they're so overwhelming. But another part. What? Nate prompted gently. Another part of me is falling in love with you too, Maya whispered, and it terrifies me. Hope bloomed in Nate's chest. He moved to sit beside her on the couch, tentatively taking her hand. We can be terrified together. Maya laughed softly through her tears. Is that your idea of romance? I'm new at this, Nate reminded her with a small smile, but I'm a quick learner. He reached up to gently wipe away a tear from her cheek. I don't need an answer about the restaurant right now. Take all the time you need to think about it. But please come home. The mansion isn't home without you. Anymore. Maya looked down at their joined hands. What about the tabloids, the rumors? Let them talk, Nate said firmly. I'm not ashamed of how I feel about you. In fact, he paused, considering something. What if we stopped hiding, went public on our own terms? What do you mean? Maya asked. There's a charity dinner next weekend for the children's hospital. Come with me, not as my chef, but as my date. Let the world see us together, proud and unashamed. Maya bit her lip. That's a big step, Nate. I know, he agreed, but I'm tired of hiding what I feel for you, unless you're ashamed to be seen. With me? Don't be ridiculous, Maya said immediately. I don't belong in that world of galas and designers and society photographers. You belong wherever you want to be, Nate told her, and I want you by my side, but only if you want that too. Maya was quiet for a long moment, considering. Then, slowly she leaned forward and pressed her lips gently to his. The kiss was brief, but held a promise that made Nate's heart soar. I need a new dress, she said when she pulled away. If we're going to shock society, I want to look good doing it. Nate laughed, relief and joy bubbling up inside him. You always look good. But yes, any dress you want. Maya's expression grew serious again. About the restaurant, I need to think about it. Not because I don't appreciate the offer, but because it's a huge responsibility. Take all the time you need, Nate assured her. There's no rush and no pressure. And what about us, Maya asked softly. Where do we go from here? Nate squeezed her hand gently. One step at a time. We're both new at this, remember? We'll figure it out together. Maya nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. Together, I like the sound of that. The Children's Hospital charity dinner was held at the Grand Plaza Hotel, the same venue where Nate had hosted countless business functions over the years. But tonight felt entirely different. Tonight, Maya was by his side. She wore a simple, emerald gown that brought out the green in her eyes, her hair swept up in an elegant style that Eloise had helped her with. As they stepped out of the limousine, cameras flashed rapidly, capturing the moment that would grace tomorrow's society pages. Ready? Nate asked, offering his arm. Maya took a deep breath and nodded, placing her hand in the crook of his elbow. As ready as I'll ever be. They walked the red carpet together, Nate proudly introducing Maya to fellow business leaders and philanthropists. Some looked surprised, others curious, but Nate didn't care. For the first time in his life, he was following his heart, rather than social expectations. Nathaniel, James Harrington's voice came from behind them, and the lovely Maya. How nice to see you both together. Nate turned, keeping Maya close to his side. James, enjoying the evening? Immensely, James replied, his eyes calculating as they moved between Nate and Maya. Especially now that the mystery is solved, you two make a striking couple. Thank you, Maya said with quiet dignity. Though I'm surprised by your interest in Mr. Blackwood's personal life. One might almost think you had something to do with those tabloid stories. James's smile faltered slightly. A coincidence, I assure you, though it has been entertaining to watch Nathaniel finally show some human emotion. Love has made you vulnerable. My friend, you're wrong, James, Nate replied calmly. Love hasn't made me vulnerable. It's made me stronger. He led Maya away before James could respond, guiding her toward their table. Did you see his face? Maya whispered. He didn't expect me to confront him. You were magnificent, Nate told her. Though I think you just confirmed for him that we're serious about each other. Maya squeezed his arm gently. Good, because we aren't we? Nate stopped walking, turning to face her in the middle of the crowded ballroom. Yes, we are. In fact, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Maya's eyes widened. Nate, what are you doing? Not what you think, he assured her with a smile, opening the box to reveal a small golden key. This is the key to your new restaurant space. I found it yesterday, the old Romano's building on 5th Street. It's yours if you want it. Maya stared at the key, then back at Nate. You already bought it? I put a deposit down, Nate explained. Fully refundable if you decide it's not right for you, but I wanted you to know I meant what I said. This isn't just talk, Maya. I believe in you and your talent. Tears glistened in Maya's eyes as she took the small key. Thank you, she whispered, for believing in me that much. Always, Nate promised. Now, shall we give them something to really talk about? Before Maya could ask what he meant, Nate pulled her into his arms and kissed her, right there in the middle of the ballroom, surrounded by New York's elite. Cameras flashed frantically, capturing the moment for tomorrow's headlines. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Maya laughed. Well, that should clear up any confusion about our relationship. That was the idea, Nate said, grinning. No more hiding, no more confusion, just us facing the world together. 6 months later, the grand opening of Taste, Maya's new restaurant, was the hottest ticket in town. The space had been completely transformed from the old Italian restaurant it once was, now featuring warm colors, comfortable seating, and an open kitchen where guests could watch Maya and her team work their magic. Nate stood proudly by her side as she cut the ribbon, her grandmother and brother beaming from the front row of gathered guests and press. I can't believe this is really happening, Maya whispered to him as they prepared to welcome the first diners. Believe it, Nate told her. You've earned this, all on your own. I just provided the space. And it was true. While Nate had purchased the building, everything else, from the concept to the menu to the decor, had been entirely Maya's vision. She had insisted on keeping the investment arrangement formal and transparent, working with her own lawyers to ensure everything was proper and professional. The restaurant was an immediate success, with critics praising the unpretentious yet sophisticated cuisine that warms both stomach and soul. Reservations were booked solid for months in advance, and Maya quickly became a rising star in the culinary world. But the true triumph was happening behind the scenes, in the relationship that had blossomed between them. Nate had moved into a smaller, cozier house closer to the restaurant, leaving behind the cold grandeur of Blackwood Mansion. Maya split her time between the restaurant and their new home, gradually bringing warmth and life to every room. They took things slowly, learning each other's rhythms and quirks, building a foundation of trust and respect alongside their growing love. Nate discovered a depth of emotion he had never known existed, while Maya found security in Nate's unwavering support of her dreams. On the night of Taste's 6-month anniversary, after the last customer had left and the staff had gone home, Nate found Maya in the kitchen creating something special. A new recipe, he asked, slipping his arms around her waist from behind. No, an old one, Maya replied, turning in his embrace. Cinnamon rolls, the first thing we ever made together. Nate smiled, remembering that morning in his kitchen that seemed so long ago now. Our beginning. One of many beginnings, Maya corrected, rising on her toes to kiss him softly. Every day with you feels like a fresh start, a new flavor to discover. Speaking of new beginnings, Nate said, suddenly serious, I have something to ask you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, a jewelry box this time, not a key. Maya's breath caught as he opened it to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. Maya Bennett, Nate said, his voice steady, despite the pounding of his heart. You taught me how to taste life, how to open my heart to joy and love and possibility. Will you marry me? Tears filled Maya's eyes as she nodded, too overcome for words at first. Yes, she finally managed. Yes, I will marry you, Nathaniel Blackwood, as he slipped the ring onto her finger, The timer dinged, announcing that the cinnamon rolls were ready. They both laughed at the perfect timing. "Our first meal as an engaged couple," Maya said, removing the golden rolls from the oven. Later, as they sat in the empty restaurant sharing warm cinnamon rolls and champagne, Nate marveled at how far they had come. From the cold, closed-off man who had interviewed a chef because his board insisted, to this. A man fully alive, fully in love, fully present in his own life. "What are you thinking about?" Maya asked, noticing his contemplative expression. "About taste?" Nate replied, taking her hand across the table. "Not just food, but life. How bland everything was before you. How rich it is now." Maya smiled, the love in her eyes warming him from the inside out. "And we're just getting started. There's a lifetime of flavors for us to discover together." "I can't wait," Nate said, meaning it with all his heart. With Maya by his side, every day promised to be a new adventure, a new taste, a new joy to savor. For a man who had never known love, Nate had finally discovered its flavor, and it was sweeter than anything he could have imagined. The end.